Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bible Thumper podcast, where somebody's got to say it. My name is Patrick Hayes, your regular host, and with me today is Ian Vincent, missionary to the Philippines. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Great to be here and excited to be on a podcast. First time to ever speak on a podcast.
Wonderful. Well, let me tell you, the fact that you're on the prestigious, world-famous Bible Thumper podcast is a feather in your cap. So how long have you and your family been out on the road on deputation?
Well, I guess basically you can say since March 2019. That's when we first got into the U.S. Because we got married in the Philippines and then kind of in the U.S. doing two things at once, doing our deputation and then getting my wife her immigration to be a U.S. citizen. So kind of a little long process, but we're basically we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and our plan is to get back to the Philippines by December.
Now, you were married in the Philippines. Do I understand it correctly that your wife is a citizen of the Philippines?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Now, does that help you in any way? I mean, I know that's not why you married her, but does that help with getting into a country as a missionary?
Yeah, definitely. Because being married to a Filipino citizen, that helps me to basically be visa free for a whole year.
Oh, so you guys can start out without any paperwork.
Yeah. So basically, I went there single first, and then I met my wife there, and so basically I tell people and tell my wife she saves me a bunch of money, probably let me think here, could be $500-$750 a year just in visa fees and extending your visa and all that stuff. So definitely she helps me out a lot.
Okay. So you have already been over to the Philippines. That's where you met your wife.
Yes, sir.
Were you going over there to look at it to see if that was where you wanted to go, or did you already know that's where you wanted to do the work of the Lord?
I already knew that the Lord had wanted me there. So graduated from Bible college 2012, and then did a few months deputation because I took a trip to the Philippines. But September 2013 got to the Philippines, and I was working with a American missionary there, and was going to come back, but then my sending church, my pastor there in Kentucky, said, "Well, you know what? You're already over in the Philippines. We'll provide you with enough support to get by. So why don't you just stay in the Philippines?" So I stayed in the Philippines. September 2013 got there, and then really just stayed there. Basically until I came back in the U.S. 2019, about 3 years ago.
And you came back just after you got married?
Yes, about a year after.
Did you bring any of your family over there for the wedding?
Yes, actually, I was able to. My parents were there, and my two brothers were there. Unfortunately, my other two sisters weren't able to come. One sister had just got married, and she said that she wanted to save money for a house. And then my other sister, I think she was probably, let me think now, 10 or 11, maybe 9 years old by that time. And my parents said she probably can't handle the 14-hour flight to the Philippines.
That's a lot. That's a long way. That would definitely be the longest I've ever traveled for a wedding.
See, I think the whole travel time just from America to the Philippines is about 24-hour period, 24 hours to get there.
Wow.
With layover and everything.
Oh, my soul.
But yeah, I got to have most of my family there, and pretty big wedding, kind of like a Filipino style and American wedding style.
Okay. Now, you guys are almost done with deputation. You said you don't need to do really any paperwork to move over there and get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once you're there for a year, what are you going to have to do?
What I can do is basically what they call permanent residence. Mm-hmm. So I can get that, and that's probably the only difference between that and being maybe Filipino citizen is you can't vote, and also being a foreigner, you actually can't own any guns in the Philippines.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, once you become a permanent resident, can you?
No.
And so
I will still be labeled as foreigner.
Okay. What other benefit is there to becoming a Filipino citizen other than guns and voting?
I guess purchasing land in your own name.
Okay.
Other than that, really can't think of anything else.
Will it affect the work you do with missions at all?
I wouldn't say. I wouldn't think so. No.
Okay. Now, when you first go over there, I know some missionaries, they are going to get a visa to work with a church. They have their support. And it's actually a case where they're not allowed to get a job in the country that they're going to. They have to live just on the support that they raise. Is that going to be the same in your situation moving over there?
Yes, that would be the same. Mostly, actually, that's another thing. As foreigners, I don't think you can really work a job there unless you get a work visa. So yeah, which actually is the most cases for missionaries anywhere you go is, they're only supported by churches in America,
Mhm.
and their only job is to really start a church, to preach the gospel, win souls and build a church.
And the Philippines is a wide open country, right? They know that you are going over there to be a missionary and to work and start a church and see people saved, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. They're very, very open country. Probably one hand, two hands. I can count the number of times people have rejected a gospel tract. So
Wow.
that's how just very open they are, and you can preach pretty much freely in the schools, public schools, in prisons. You can go to police stations. Probably even go to like what do you call army camps, and
Mhm.
preach the gospel there.
Now, when you first get over there, are you going to start out working with the church that you were with back in 2013 when you were first there?
No, we have our own church now.
Okay.
I didn't actually start it, but we are working together with a Filipino man. We've been there now since let me think here, June 2014. Been part of that church, and so be in prayer for us as well, because we've been working for probably about a year trying to get permits and paperwork done so we can start building our own church building.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
And that's been going since 2014.
24, yeah. Well, it was before I got there.
Mhm.
It had already started, but yeah, I've been part of that church since 2014.
Where in the Philippines are you going to be?
So it is, if you actually, I got it on my card on the back. But kind of, I would say basically kind of in the middle of the
Mhm.
Philippines. You go to the western part. It's labeled as Western Visayas. So our island is Negros Occidental. Um, it's not that too famous, I guess. If you know Cebu City or Cebu Island, they're one of the major cities of the Philippines, and they're just to the east of us.
Now, how the Philippines is a lot of islands.
Oh yeah.
How many islands make up the country?
So officially, it is 7,107.
Obviously, they're not all occupied.
No, I believe the number is over 2,100 are occupied.
Wow. Okay. And the island that you're going to, I mean, that certainly looks like it's one of the largest of the, largest 5 or 6 islands.
I'm not for sure how much land size it would be. I do know if you take all of the landmass of the Philippine Islands,
Mhm.
it can fit inside the state of Arizona.
No kidding.
So if you think about that, if you think our population is over 109 million people, so all of those people living basically inside the state of Arizona, but separated into all these different islands.
Yeah. Wow. So there must be some pretty large cities that are built up and there's a dense population.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's a few number of cities that are major cities. Our place is 77,000 people, and it's only really classified as a town because we're, I guess you could say, kind of out in the country. On my prayer card, and maybe I can share this later on the Facebook page, but
Mhm.
we have a volcano that's at the backdrop of our town. So kind of out in the country. Really, if you go from the center of the town, you can probably drive 5, 8, maybe 10 minutes outside, and the whole circumference of the town, and that's basically the whole town center.
Oh, no kidding.
So kind of small, but people are spread out.
Now, you mentioned volcanoes.
Mhm.
Is the Philippines on the Ring of Fire?
It is. It is actually.
Because you guys had one famous one. I don't know if it was part of the Philippines, Krakatoa.
Krakatoa. It doesn't sound familiar.
It's a small island, and I think it's about halfway between Australia and the Philippines. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in modern history. I think it was in the late 1800s, like in the 1890s. Anyway, it was interesting. I was just wondering if it was, maybe part of the Philippines. That's okay.
Can't say I know of it. I'll probably Google search it here in a minute.
It's an obscure question. I wasn't expecting you to know that one. So your wife's family must be pretty excited that you are going to be doing work in the Philippines. So their daughter is going to be close by.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And actually, my mother-in-law, her house is only 15 minutes from where our church is.
Oh, get out of here. That was my next question, was how close, are they in the country to where you guys are going to be working?
Yeah. And I'm really blessed. I have such a good mother-in-law, maybe unlike some other people out there, but I've been blessed because she's told us that she has an extra land lot, just a few paces away from her house. She has a couple of fruit trees there, but she has said that we can just build our house there.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. That's a great, great start.
Oh, yeah. Helps us out a lot.
So you are with FBMI, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell the folks at home what FBMI is?
So FBMI, that would stand for Fundamental Baptist Missions International. It's I guess you could say one of the biggest mission boards for missionaries. And basically what they do is, a missionary will travel from church to church and present their ministry, maybe preach, and try to get support from churches so that they can be full-time as a missionary, as a preacher, as a preaching the gospel on the foreign field. And so churches will try to help those missionaries. And usually what they'll do, they'll send their money support to these mission boards like FBMI. And FBMI just kind of basically takes that money in. It's like a record keeper. They'll send you a receipt, and sort of like almost like a bit of accountability between the missionary and the churches, and whatever for tax reasons, all that good stuff. And even some mission boards, mine, they provide health insurance for us as well.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And they're going to get the money into the currency that you need. They have the experience with getting the money overseas and into the bank that you need.
Yeah. So what I do is I actually have a bank account set up already in the Philippines. So, actually what they do, they just send it to my US bank, and then I can just transfer that electronically to my Philippines bank.
That's great, because let me tell you, that is not the case for every missionary. Sometimes in some countries, it's pretty difficult. And having a missions agency or a missions board is helpful because, if someone were to say, hey, Patrick, from our church, I want to be a missionary over here, and I'd like to go through our local church, it'd be like, oh, great, I'm just going to reinvent the wheel because I have no experience with this whatsoever. So that's great that, you're with a missions board. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you are very different from a lot of missionaries that are ending deputation in that you've already been in country, right, and you have several years of experience over there.
Yes, that's right.
I feel like this is a terribly ignorant question, and it shows the lack of prep I did for this. What language do they speak over there?
Oh, no, that's no problem. So they English is actually part of their official language.
Oh, thank the Lord.
But they do have their own language. You can call it Filipino, or Tagalog is the name of it. But it's interesting because I mentioned before there's so many different islands. So each different island kind of has their own local dialect. So the island that we are on, the dialect is called Ilonggo. So this is pretty interesting. On our island, it's politically split in half. So we're in the northern half, and we speak Ilonggo because the island next to us, west of us, is Panay Island, and the major city of there is Iloilo. So Ilonggo comes from Iloilo. The southern part of the island, they're facing Cebu City, so they actually speak Cebuano, a different dialect.
How different are these dialects? Are they?
So it's different enough to where I'm Ilonggo, and if you cross into the southern part of our island and you try to speak your dialect, they really couldn't understand you. So that's how different it is. And even though some of the letters, they're switched differently in words from our dialect to the next dialect.
I'll tell you what, that Tower of Babel incident really messed stuff up.
I tell you, another thing is, so I'm half Filipino. My mom's Filipino, born in the Philippines. I was born and raised here in America. And my mom, her dialect is Ilocano. So that's a different dialect. And that is from the mainland, Luzon.
And your mom and dad still live here in the States?
Yes, they do.
Any chance they're going to move over to the Philippines to be with their...
Oh, who knows? Maybe, because my dad has actually been pretty involved in our ministry that we have in our church. We do a tent revival every year, and so I think he's been part of it now for 3 or 4 years. So basically, almost every year they've been able to come over and be a part of that.
Okay. So let me ask you this. A missionary who has been on the field, has experience over there, is about finished with deputation. You've been through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What is keeping us from having missions be successful? If you had to say, okay, what are the 3 things that you see that we can change to be more successful, to make this thing happen? Is it us over here and support? Is it difficulties in the country? What is it?
It's a very good question. I guess maybe I could try to be broad here to include, any missionary going to any foreign field.
Sure.
For me, I don't know about other missionaries, but one of the struggles is, trying to initially contact pastors and try to set up a meeting with them. I think we could probably, number one would be somehow make some type of better communication between missionaries and pastors as far as setting up meetings, because it's very funny, because sometimes I'll call pastors and their voicemail or their church voicemail will say, we will get back to you, but many times, and I understand, they get probably maybe dozens of calls from missionaries, but they don't get back to you.
Yeah.
So I found out the best way to contact a pastor would be through email.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps out a lot. But as that's number one, I'd say communication between pastors and missionaries, setting up meetings.
Do you have trouble setting up meetings anywhere? Is there anything that you found will keep a pastor from wanting to have a missionary come to their church? And I only ask you this question because I ask every missionary I talk to this question, and some of them I found, there's some similar issues that
let me think
unfortunately
here.
Keep.
Sometimes it might be from what Bible college you graduated from.
Yep,
that can be one thing. I have a missionary friend of mine. He told me once that a church and a pastor dropped his support because he grew out a beard.
No kidding.
Yeah, true story.
And they said that?
They, I believe so. Yeah, they said that.
Wow. So they wouldn't have supported Jesus or Moses or Aaron or basically, just about anybody we read about in the Bible.
Yeah.
That's
I don't
terrible.
know. Sometimes it could be just the pastor's preference. For instance, some pastors, they will only support missionaries from one type of a mission board, like maybe FBMI, or another famous one is BIMI.
Mm-hmm.
Or, they'll support only missionaries who start their own churches. So, automatically that would take me out of the running for support. So sometimes it's like, I don't know, just the pastor's preferences.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we take a little bit of a different view over here at our church. And let me tell you, I've been an independent Baptist for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I know the groups. I know what we're talking about. And it's a shame because I always look at it as, anyone that's willing to leave the comforts of America and air conditioning to go to another country, and try to do the work of the Lord. I think it's terrible when they have to fight to get support. For me, it's like, man, we need to figure out a way to get these guys supported and out onto the mission field, as soon as possible.
Yeah,
and get them going.
Going back to your original question, you said 3 things. That would be the second thing I would say. Trying to get missionaries to the mission field is, pastors kind of being open about support, because there's been, maybe a lot of meetings I've been to where there's no mention of support, or if we will support you or if we will not. So just kind of trying to be open. I know it might be kind of as a pastor, making yourself vulnerable, saying, I don't know if we have this much money or,
Hmm.
it depends on the missions giving or that, but just trying to be open. So at least the missionary at least knows what to expect.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
For the third thing, I don't know if I've thought that far. I will say this, that it's interesting that there's a lot of missionaries that are getting
Mhm.
old, and there's not really younger missionaries coming up behind them to kind of sort of take their place. For instance, that American missionary I first started working with in the Philippines, he is, let's see, in his 70s, and there probably could be a Filipino man to kind of take his place, but he's getting old, he's getting some health problems, and who's gonna take his place? And there's
So
not many. I could say, I don't know about the country as a whole, but kind of personally, from what I've seen, not too many missionaries are being called into the field as far as maybe like my generation or the younger generation.
Mhm. So with an older missionary that's in a field that's already, established to work, they have a church, they've been doing it for 20, 30 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Aren't they hoping to raise up somebody that's local that could take over that work? Or do they actually need more folks that are willing to step up and,
That's true.
from America?
It's probably depending on the situation. Maybe half and half. I don't know. Probably would be better to train up someone of that nationality to continue on the work. Um, I just think of those missionaries who've come before us, maybe even like hundreds of years ago. Like you think of Hudson Taylor,
Hmm.
his story of when he went to China and then coming back to America and pleading with churches. We need more missionaries. We need more young people to join in the mission work, to join the mission field. And today you don't really see that much. Hudson Taylor had dozens, hundreds of people joining his mission work, but you don't really see that today. I just say it depends on the situation. If you would want a national pastor to join you in your work, or American missionary, or at least for my experience, what I was able to do, still being single, being able to go to the Philippines to the mission field, and being able to work with an older missionary to actually get, what do you call it, on the job training,
Oh, yeah.
OJT. So that was tremendous help to me. And I know, I think the missionary that was here maybe a few weeks ago, Greg Fryer, I think he is going to go first starting off working with the older missionary.
Hmm.
So maybe at least something like that for younger missionaries, to work with the older missionary to get more experience and to be on the field. That's a great opportunity.
Let's go. Let's back up quite a ways. Did you grow up in a Christian home?
Yes, I did actually. So I don't exactly have the testimony of my wife, because she was faithful to church 9 months before she was born.
Okay. That's great.
So she grew up in church, and
Sure.
basically I kind of grew up in church too, maybe since 6 or 7 year olds, something like that. That seems like for me, basically my whole life was kind of spent in church. So
Okay.
I'll tell you about my dad. He was in the Navy as a sailor, and he met my mom in the Bay Area. And they got married. I was born, and my dad's from Kentucky, so that's my Kentucky side of me.
Okay.
But after he got married, he really made the decision to really have a Christian family.
Hmm.
To tithe and to be faithful to church. So that's really all I've known. So I've been blessed to really have a Christian home all my life.
Do you have any? You said you have 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Yep. So 5 of us all together. I'm the oldest of the 5.
Did you guys travel around with your dad? Was he stationed in a lot of places? I know some military families have to travel quite a bit.
Well, let me think here. I think he was only in the Navy for 2 or 3 years. So he said that was enough for him, so he got out.
Okay.
But we talked before, he's an electrician, so he owns his own electrical business. And so since basically age 13, I've been able to work with my dad And hey, think of that. A missionary to be a preacher. We what are Christians? We are the light of the world.
Yep.
So I came from a pretty good background, being an electrician.
Being an electrician.
Lighting up a house. Now I'm lighting up the world.
Well, I'll tell you what. One of the biggest complaints I get from guys that are out of Bible college and in the field is they wish they had more experience in construction. They all say the same thing. They're like, man, I never would have guessed how much hanging drywall, was involved in church work, when they start out.
Yeah.
So that's great that you have an experience like
that. It's been pretty valuable for me. I've been able to actually even do some electrical work in our church and even in my mother-in-law's house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So your dad got out of the Navy. Your mom and dad met in the Bay Area, and I'm guessing that's where they got married, and that's where he was stationed.
Yeah.
After that, where did you guys move to?
So I was born in San Francisco, and then we moved to Kentucky, Western Kentucky, in Owensboro. So that's where I was pretty much raised and grew up for most of my life.
And that's where your sending church is out of, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then FBMI, that's associated with First Baptist Church of Hammond?
Yes, that's right. And
is that where you went to Bible college?
Yep. I graduated from Hiles-Anderson, went there from 2008 to 2012. And then I mentioned earlier, did a few months deputation, and pretty much a year later, I was on the mission field.
Okay. So tell us about your time in Bible college. Did you know you wanted to be involved with missions before going? Did the Lord get a hold of your heart and speak to you about missions when you were there?
So before I went to Bible college, I had already felt the call of God on my life to be a missionary. So I made that decision in 2005. And what helped me towards that direction was I took a mission trip to Mexico.
Okay.
To Juarez, Mexico, so right across the border from El Paso, Texas. And I did that in 2004, and then second time went in 2005. And then after that second trip, made that decision to be a missionary, because that was my first time going outside of America, and then just to see these people, pretty much poor people, living in these very, poorly constructed houses made out of pallets, basically, and just to see them, how happy they were to receive the gospel. And I was like, wow, what if that's what I can do with my life, and what if that's what God wants me to do? And so, 2005, I made that decision, and went to Bible college already knowing I was going to be a missionary, but I didn't know where. So I thought maybe Mexico, since, that's where I first got the burden for missions, or the Philippines, since my background is Filipino, my mom being Filipino.
Had you been to you had not been to the Philippines by that time, though, correct?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I did get to go in 2011 in the summer between my junior year and senior year, and was able to be there for 6 or 8 weeks, and was able to kind of work in the church, get some experience. And a funny story is, when I first went there, got out of the airport in the capital city in Manila, and the first thing I saw was KFC.
Get out of here.
So I was like a call, a sign from God, me being from Kentucky, and seeing Kentucky Fried Chicken.
that was enough. You knew that could be the place.
But let's see. I think it was junior year, senior year. I felt like God wanted me to be in the Philippines, because my freshman year, I started going to a missions prayer meeting. They had it once a week, and I didn't know what to pray for, so I thought, I'll just start praying for missionaries in the Philippines. So started praying for missionaries in the Philippines. I would email them, ask them, what are your prayer requests, and then I just started praying, God, please save the Filipino people. Please save the Philippines. And after just praying that prayer so many times, and it just seemed like God wanted me in the Philippines. So I became sort of like my own answer to my own prayer. So by my junior, senior year, especially after that trip to the Philippines, I really felt like that's where God wanted me.
In Bible college, is it hard to meet girls once you've decided you're going to be a missionary? Because all of a sudden you're saying, if this works out and we get married, we're going far away.
That's kind of in the back of my mind, because to date someone, for me, I have to date with the intention of, you might marry this person.
Oh, yeah, so, sure.
So it is funny, because I've in the college, Highlands College. There were a couple of Filipino girls there, so actually, I kind of tried to date all the Filipino girls because,
Sure.
me being there's not much Filipinos in Kentucky.
Fair enough.
So I did have a few dates, but obviously I wasn't able to find a wife in the college.
Yeah.
But praise the Lord, I went to the Philippines. 2 months after I got in the Philippines, I met she wasn't my wife then, but I met my wife and met her on my birthday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And was she involved with the church that you were working with?
Yeah. No. She was involved in her own church. Her home church was only just 30 minutes from where our church is.
Okay.
And there's actually a connection there because a graduate from her church's Bible college, I believe, started this church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The one that you went to back in 2013 or the one that
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. And that's the one that you're going back to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Small world.
Yeah. So it's pretty neat how God kind of worked that out. I really did try to find a wife in Bible college, but I couldn't find her there. Had to find her in the mission field.
What are you going to do?
And the funny thing is, I wanted originally to go to a different Bible college, North Valley Baptist Church, if you heard of them in Santa Clara, California, because a lot of Filipinos are over there.
Okay. So now, one of my good friends that I've had on here, his name is Scott Link, and he graduated from what's it called? Not North Valley Baptist Church, but what's the Bible college for with
Golden
Brother
State.
Golden State.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was telling me the same thing. Yeah. So, but that makes sense. I mean, being that it's, in the Bay Area and it's a short,
a lot of Filipinos over there.
You got it, a shorter flight. That makes sense. You might be the only Filipino in Western Colorado right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not a huge population that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to think if we met any Filipinos in Colorado lately. I will tell you, actually, we have, because we found a Filipino restaurant in Aurora, Colorado.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it any good?
It was pretty good. We actually, because we've drove to California, let's see, once this year, twice last year. So we pretty much always come through Denver. So yeah, we've been there a few times.
Now, something I didn't ask about before, you said you started
the missions prayer meeting?
No. In 2019, you started deputation.
Oh, deputation, yes, sir.
So you started right before COVID and this whole mess.
Yeah, well, interesting.
That could not have been easy.
Interesting thing. I mentioned earlier, one of our ministries of our church is a tent revival that we do. So we
down in Kentucky or over in the Philippines?
In the Philippines.
Okay.
So, and of course, the last one was in 2020.
How'd that go?
Oh, listen to this. It went really good. The dates of it was March 8, 9, and 10. First 2 nights, we had over 1,000 people there. And the last night was our biggest attendance ever. We had over 2,000 people for that last night. And, I have a picture on my prayer card. If you see it, there's no face mask, definitely no 6 feet social distancing.
Yeah, of course.
So this was right before everything happened. Actually, the day after our tent revival happened, the WHO, World Health Organization, declared a worldwide pandemic.
Wow.
And so it's just by the grace of God, the power of God, nobody ever got sick. But, he worked in our tent revival. But unfortunately, when we were supposed to come back to America just a few days after that, we couldn't because the Philippines shut down all the airports, all the seaports. So nobody could get in, nobody could get out because of COVID. So it was basically a whole country lockdown.
That was a pretty serious lockdown.
So we were stuck there actually until... So we got there in February. We're supposed to come back in March for about a month, but got stuck there and we didn't come back until July later that year, 2020.
Wow.
So like half of 2020, we didn't do any deputation at all. We were in the Philippines stuck.
Okay, so then when you got back over to stateside, were there any difficulties with churches and number of people they can have and churches not meeting?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if you know of Pastor Corey Sulian in Longmont.
Yep.
Yeah, so
north
we had
of Denver, right?
Yeah, we actually had a missions conference with him. Let me think here. I think it was in September, and he actually had 3 different services for Sunday morning. Because of COVID, just to try to accommodate all the people.
No kidding. So you schedule them out, and
it
was like goes to this one, and then this one,
and it was like one right after the other. So that was a long Sunday.
Yeah, no kidding, huh? How early did you start the services?
Oh, let's see.
Because they'd have to be shorter, right?
It was either by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. The first
Yeah.
service.
And then that'd be tough, because how would you even fit in Sunday school or make that
Yeah.
work?
So basically there was no Sunday school. It was just that one service.
Yep.
Well, one Sunday morning service that each people could attend,
Mhm.
3 different times, 3 different services, but it was the same preacher, basically the same message.
Sure.
And then, regular Sunday night service.
Yeah.
So, 2020 was a definitely interesting year. It was very slow, but then it was 2021 was when things started to really pick up.
Yeah, things were a lot better here in Mesa County, Colorado than a lot of places in America.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I was talking to friends that, are pastors of churches in different states. And boy, depending on where you were, they were serious about stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they really locked it down. Here in Mesa County, one pastor that I know, the county called him and basically said, hey, we got a report that, you guys are not wearing your masks and you guys are not staying as far apart as you should. And we'd like to come in and, just train you as to how you need to do it. And the pastor, very nicely said to this young lady that worked for the county, he's like, look, our church is the group that is not going to listen to you. He's like, you're welcome to come and you're welcome to teach us whatever you want. I'm just telling you, the type of people that are totally against all of this, they go to our church.
Oh,
so it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. But you're welcome to do whatever you like. So, run that up the flagpole, talk to your superiors, and let me know what you'd like to do. Yeah. And he said that was it. Never heard a word about it.
Oh, wow.
So in some places where there was resistance, they're like, you know what? We've got 99% of the county complying. We're just going to turn our head and kind of ignore this. Yeah. And then there are other places like just up valley in Vail, where if you were without a mask walking down the street, the cops were going to write you a ticket.
Wow, that's like up the mountains too, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, it was something else. Whereas when they came out with the mask mandates here in Grand Junction, Colorado, that very first morning, the sheriff gets on, the news and says, we don't have time to write tickets for masks. So that's what we're doing. We have real police work to do.
Right.
So, it's between you and God what you want to do with a mask, but we're not going to get involved.
Oh, I could probably tell you horror stories in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Americans probably couldn't make it over there. And, for me, myself as a missionary, I'm in a foreign country and I have to abide by these laws and rules or whatever they set out in the Philippines, or else, I could possibly, I don't know, go to jail or get kicked out of the country and you lose your ministry, you lose your church. And I'll tell you, you mentioned about the police in, whereas in Vail, if you wear a face mask, you could be, or not wearing a face mask, you could be written a ticket. So that actually almost happened to me in the Philippines. I was in the capital city of our island and parked my car across the street and was going to cross the street to go to Dunkin' Donuts. Before I did, I got to the stoplight at the crosswalk and realized, I don't have my face mask. So I went back to my car and I had a couple of my friends in there. I said, hey, I forgot my face mask. And they said, oh, look, there's a guy there. And it was a traffic officer following me. He was about to write me a ticket because I didn't have a face mask on.
No kidding. And you were just going back to your car to get it.
Yeah. So I grabbed it and I said, hey, I got it right here. No need for a ticket.
Yeah.
And we really had a lockdown. The whole month of April, we had to shut down our church services for about 6 weeks. Mother's Day was actually our first day back in church.
Wow.
In 2020. But during that time, they were very strict. And where we were staying at, we were actually staying at my mother-in-law's house at that time. And that was just outside of the town limits. Mm-hmm. So if your address was not in the town, you couldn't enter the town. So even if we did have church services, I couldn't even get into the town because,
Did they have like roadblocks set up?
They did.
No kidding.
Yeah, they had police set up there. So, funny story. During that whole month, I couldn't even go to the church or even visit church people in the town. And so one of our church workers came kind of to the border of the town, and there's basically a bridge they had to cross to get into the town. So we met him at the bridge so that I can hand my tithes to the church. It was funny because it almost felt like a drug deal.
Yeah,
We're
sure.
gonna meet this person at
Let's
this
just
bridge.
do it after sundown, so that no one can see
So
us.
it was crazy. It was very strict, and even during that time, what they did was, at least for our town, it may have been different other places, but you had to have a what do they call it, a quarantine pass, a just basically a little card from the local government saying that you're the one designated person that will go outside the house to buy groceries and stuff.
Because that was my next question. When
Yeah.
you said that someone outside of the city limits couldn't go in,
Yeah.
were there enough services outside of the city where you could go grocery shopping and get everything you needed?
Well, fortunately, there is another town. Well, it's actually a city. It's bigger than our town where the church is. It's just 15 minutes away, and so that's where I went, and our
And they would let
address
you in there?
yeah, our address is part of that city.
Oh, okay.
So, but then even then, at the city limits, they had a police checkpoint. They would actually check if you had the quarantine card with you.
Wow.
And then they actually, I think one of them initialed it and put in the the date that you went in to the town. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. But for me, most Filipinos, I guess you could say, are pretty patient people. They put up with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, whatever I have to do.
Yeah, that's what it
and
is.
for
right
me,
now.
it was kind of like I don't know, kind of funny to me. Like, wow, they go to such extreme measures to get all this stuff done. But it didn't really bother me too much.
Were people still meeting in their homes or getting together for Bible studies or anything like that? I know what the government was like, but what were the Filipino people like? Were they putting up with it, or were they thinking, you know what, we still want to get together and we don't want to just give up everything?
Yeah, for the most part, they pretty much put up with it. Of course, a lot of them did complain too as well.
Yeah.
I complained myself a little bit, but we put up with it. So, and it was interesting. For instance, I'll tell you, I went to the bank during that time one time, and they had a makeshift sink outside. You had to wash your hands with soap, and then use hand sanitizer afterwards. And then they had a book at the entrance. The guard was there, and he would have you sign your name and your phone number, I guess, for contact tracing,
Okay.
if ever someone got sick with COVID, and they could tell you, oh, on this day you were there, and,
Sure.
whatever. So, stuff like that. They're just so strict over there. And I think even just now, last month, I think they just opened up now for those with a tourist visa they can now enter the Philippines. I think first time in 2 years.
Do they have any requirements as far as getting the shot?
Let's see. I know that if you have got the shot, if you got vaccinated, then I think pretty much you don't have to quarantine once you enter the Philippines at the airport. But they do say that you have to go to, your final destination, your home, whatever, and then you can quarantine there. If you're not vaccinated, I think you have to quarantine pretty much at a hotel near the airport for 3 days, 7 days, something like that. 7 days. And that's paid at your own expense.
Oh,
and it has to be a hotel that's approved by the government.
That's got to be cutting into tourism. I mean, that's got to be killing it. Well, is tourism a pretty major part of the economy in the Philippines?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah.
I mean, with all those islands, I got to imagine there's beautiful views of the ocean everywhere.
Definitely. Yeah, for instance, I'll tell you, the missionary I know, he went back to the Philippines a few months ago, last year, December, and that was during that time you still had a quarantine, whether or not you were vaccinated. So he had a quarantine, for a week in a hotel, and he had 5 kids. So all of them together in one room, and they actually, if I'm correct, they had to spend Christmas in the hotel because they were still during that quarantine time.
Wow.
So pretty crazy. So, pretty amazing for us on deputation as we're finishing up, looking to go back in December. All of these restrictions have been kind of relaxed a bit. And so fortunately for us, it'll be, I would say, easier for us now to get in the Philippines.
Yeah, it seems like it's dying down everywhere, and it's getting a lot easier. So
unless there's a new variant that crops up and rears its ugly head.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I guess that's still a possibility. Of course, we're supporting one missionary who was supposed to be in Ukraine by now.
Oh yeah.
So, you never know what's going to keep you, or what difficulties might show up. So now you have a 2-year-old son. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he was born in the States or over there?
Born here in the States.
Okay. Do you have to do any paperwork with him? He has to have a passport and go through anything to go on over to the Philippines?
Yeah, he would need his passport, which is funny. He was already born when we went to the Philippines in 2020, and we got stuck there in the Philippines because of COVID. So we went to the government office, got his passport. It's funny because we got his picture on his passport, but now he looks so much different from that baby picture when he was 4 or 5 months old, I guess.
Yeah.
And that passport will last him, I think, 5 years until he's 5 years old. So.
How can you even identify a 5-year-old from a baby picture?
Funny. But so he needs a passport. He's a U.S. citizen, but because also his mother's Filipino, so in the Philippines we can actually process his Filipino citizenship and passport, so he can be dual citizen.
I was wondering, does that happen when you get your citizenship over there, or does he have to be filed separately as far as paperwork?
You
know what I mean? Do the kids go along with the parents? So whatever level the parents are at, the kids get the same treatment?
I think most of the time, yes. For him though, you would have to process. I don't think we can process it in the U.S. So he'll have to process it in the Philippines.
But because his mom is a Filipino citizen, it'll be easier for him to become one as well.
Yeah.
And then you have dual citizenship
for him, but for me, I don't.
Sure, not yet. Maybe in the future.
Just permanent residence, but basically almost like being a citizen.
Okay. How far along are you with your deputation?
Yeah, so I mentioned we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
So we got 83% right now.
Okay.
So we basically need let me think here. Need 7 more churches at $100. That would get us up to
where you need to be.
The 100% support. Yeah.
What's the percentage of churches that take you on? How many churches you got to hit? So you say, okay, we need 100 churches. How many do you have to hit in order to get that 100?
It's a good question. I haven't really thought about it because it's deputation.
I'm a math guy, yeah. So numbers are always come to my mind.
It's all been kind of a blur because we're in all these different churches and different situations. I really can't say. I'll tell you that we need for our support level, we need 40 churches at $100 a month. And so some churches, they vary in their giving. We got some at 50, 65. We got quite a few. Most of our support is $100 a month. There's some that'll give actually a little bit more than that. But it all depends. It depends on the country, how much support that you need, how big is your family. But definitely you need to hit the whatever number that is, hit that over number. So we need 40 churches. So you probably need to contact, I don't know, at least I would say 80 churches to try to at least get meetings. And then maybe of those meetings of churches you have, not all of them is going to support you.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you obviously have a bunch of friends who are missionaries, right? Because in Bible college, you were taking some classes that were specific to missions. And I'm guessing only the guys that want to be in missions and the ladies that want to be in missions take those classes. So the missionary group is a small group where everyone knows everyone, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay. So what do you find as far as you get the support you need, you get over there, and then I would be concerned that some number of churches over time stop supporting you because the pastor retires, the church fizzles out, who knows what happens. So, is it kind of expected that after so many years, you'll have to come back and raise some more support?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially, if your family grows.
Oh yeah.
And
because
it's funny.
All of a sudden you go from 1 to 6 kids and it's like, well, this isn't going to cut it anymore.
Yeah. And it's funny. You look at a lot of missionaries today, and most times they actually have, pretty big families.
Yeah.
Why is that? I don't know. Maybe because they're kind of lonely, I guess.
Yeah. They don't
to have their own family, their own sort of culture, American culture, or maybe they take literally to go and multiply on the whole earth.
Absolutely. Yep.
I don't know.
Quiver full of arrows.
Yeah, but definitely, I don't know what the norm is today, but it used to be, missionary maybe would be on the field for 4 years and then come back for a year of furlough, what they would call coming back to America and just kind of reporting to their supporting churches and then gaining new churches to support them.
Mhm.
I think maybe the norm is being in the mission field for 4 years and then maybe coming back. I don't know. Or no, excuse me. Maybe it might be 2 or 3 years on the mission field and then coming back for, um, I don't know, 3 or 6 months at a time, something
Mhm.
like that.
And that's got to be hard to come back, especially if you just started a new church.
Mhm.
To be able to leave that for any amount of time and come back, that'd be tough.
Yeah, it is. And, we, last time in the Philippines, we were there in basically July 2020. So we're coming up on probably, about 2 years. It'll be probably about 2.5 December by the time we get back. So it's been kind of a long journey for us, and we're now at that stage. 83%. We're so
can
excited
feel it.
we can feel it. And my wife, okay, she was born and raised in the Philippines, so
Mhm.
she's definitely missing the Philippines and probably most of all the Filipino food.
Okay. All right. So you're hoping by December, you guys
Mhm.
will be over there, and beginning in 2023, you'll be in country and moving right along.
Yep. And we're praying for it, and we actually have 3 big prayer requests about that. Is of course we're at 83%, so we want to be at 100% before we get back there, and then also we're actually expecting our second child.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the due date's in September, and so it's I believe that would be good enough time. 3 months old, the baby can fly over,
Hmm.
and then my wife is working on her citizenship.
Hmm.
For her citizenship, we're at the point we just have to apply for that citizenship, have those papers approved, and I think it takes 6 months. What the immigration officer told us, and then she can have her interview, take the oath, and that would take care of it. So a lot of things to kind of get done before we get there, but it's all kind of tying in together now.
Okay.
Yeah.
How often do you get back to your home church in Kentucky?
Let's see. So we've been gone since last week of March. Well, let's see. No, let me think back here. February, we were there once, and yeah, that's the last time we've really been there. So
Wow.
we've been traveling since basically February, and this is actually our last meeting before we get back to Kentucky. We'll be in Kentucky for probably about a week and a half, and then head to North Carolina. After that we're in Cincinnati, Ohio. We'll go up to Chicago area, and be gone for another like 2 months. So not often, which is kind of a good thing. You want to be busy,
Yeah.
but
But that's also a lot of living out of a car with a 2-year-old.
that is
That is
it
not
is.
easy.
And I tell you, probably for me, what I struggle with as a missionary is just the packing, the unpacking, the loading, and the unloading. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
But for me, I don't mind traveling. It's kind of like an adventure, and
Mhm.
we get to see different places. We're in different states. Obviously, we're in different churches, meaning different people. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like an in and of itself an adventure.
Okay. Don't tell us the names. Okay. Give us, best experience, worst experience at a church when you've been on deputation.
Mm.
We don't need to know the city or the state, no identifying characteristics,
So
just something that, we would find interesting.
this might give it away, but the the 2 best missions conferences that I have ever been in.
You can tell us the names of the good ones.
They I'll try to keep it down those, but
Okay.
they were fairly large churches,
Uh-huh.
and they had a lot of missionaries in. Both of them had, if I can remember, over 6 missionaries. And so it was 4 days long, and the last day of that missions conference, they had missionaries spread out in the auditorium, and they would have their members come up to each of those missionaries and give them a handshake or a
Mhm.
hug, and then give them a card or even give them money.
Mhm.
And that's like, I'm talking about big churches,
Yeah.
and all the members going to all these different missionaries. And so for me, that was very touching, very personable, people shaking your hand, giving you a hug, or giving you money.
Mm-hmm.
And both those missions conferences, we got I'll say definitely more than this, but over $1,000 in our love offering just from
Okay.
that one time.
Yeah.
More than that, but that was the best missions conferences we ever been in.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, I hate to tell you this, I've never been to a missions conference. So please tell us what a missions conference is. What's the purpose? How do they work?
Okay. So the purpose is, obviously you can have different conferences for, revival conferences, a Bible conference, each conference kind of has a theme. So this conference is, just for missions,
Mm-hmm.
to have these different missionaries come in. And they're from different countries, different backgrounds, and most of the time each of them can give their testimony and give a presentation of their ministry and what they're doing, or those who are on deputation going to the mission field. You get to meet them, see their family, and usually missions conference will have a special guest speaker, and they'll speak all about missions,
Mm-hmm.
to get the people excited to give to missions, because that's basically the purpose of the missions conference, to raise their mission support and to have these missionaries in, and you see them, you want to support them, you want to help them, and you want to fulfill the great commission of the Bible to preach the gospel into all the world. And so that's what the missions conference is for, just to probably not the best way to describe, but raise awareness,
Mm-hmm.
of missions, of missionaries, and to support those missionaries in their, respective countries that they're going to go to.
Okay. And worst experience?
Worst experience.
Yeah.
Let's see.
These are always funny stories.
Yes.
Everybody rolls their eyes or cringes when you hear about it.
I hope nobody's listening that knows of this missions conference.
Nobody listens to this podcast, and don't even worry about it.
Well, I went to one missions conference, and there were too many missionaries there.
Oh.
And let me think here. So I went to this missions conference, and I was only scheduled just to give a testimony, 10-minute testimony. And I get there Sunday, and one of the men of the church comes up to me and asks me, "Can you do Sunday school for us?"
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, Sunday school,
Sure. Sounds
I'm
great.
not even, thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just here, I can relax. I can just attend church, sit down in the pew.
Yep.
I was like, oh, okay. Sure, I can do that. And I taught actually a Sunday school for kids.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of surprising. And we got kind of a small love offering from that. And it was just maybe a little bit too many missionaries, and the time was very limited for all the guest speakers. And there's a lot of guest speakers there, plus missionaries.
Sure. And the whole reason you're going there is to hopefully be able to meet some folks and get your name out and show everyone the work you're doing, try to raise support. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I will say that I did get to see some missionary friends of ours. And actually, I did get one meeting out of that.
Great. Of
a pastor that I had knew before. And he was actually one of my teachers in Bible college. So that was a good thing. But, you as a missionary, you get to go to a lot of different churches and conferences, and you definitely see what's good and then things that could be improved.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I'm already thinking of, our own church in the Philippines. We can implement this idea and we can do this because we saw this happening at this other church. So
absolutely.
It's just amazing to me to go around the country to see churches of all different sizes. And, speak of your church, you got a house church here. So it's amazing to see God work in different ways through different people,
Okay. Next question. And there's a reason behind this. Okay. Best love offering, worst love offering. and understand one of the reasons is there are lots of pastors that don't have a concept of what it costs to run your family all around this country. And you have some that might have been, giving a missionary $25 and they were doing that back in the 50s and that was fine. And all of a sudden, it's very different. So
Right.
What is it?
So I had already mentioned about those 2 best missions conferences, and
Yeah.
those were our best love offerings we've ever received. And one we were recently at earlier this year. Worst love offering. Well, this is the worst love offering, but it's kind of funny that a church supports us,
Mm-hmm.
and they put cents changing it as part of their um, monthly support.
Okay.
So it's like X number of dollars and then X number of cents. And I guess they do that way because they split it evenly, probably among them.
Sure.
But it's just funny, every month I see 41 cents pops up.
Yeah.
On my monthly mission support for a love offering. Maybe that missions conference I mentioned to you about, too many missionaries and too many guest speakers were there. So not enough offerings to really go around the whole to everybody.
I get it, and I was used to do pulpit fill-in, and I've traveled around and taught the Bible a little bit in the realm of evangelism. And after I did that, I came back to my home church, and I said, you know what? Whenever a preacher comes to visit, I don't care who they are, I don't care how lousy of a job they're doing, I'm stuffing $100 bill in his hand and saying thank you, because it is a lot of work to travel around and try to teach the Bible to people. And it's expensive. It's just, it's just not cheap, especially when you have a family.
Yeah, just traveling, especially now with the gas prices.
Oh, yeah, they've over doubled, and in some parts of the country tripled.
Yeah, and then from hotel to hotel.
Yeah.
A lot of places I've been surprised. We're just visiting a church, and nothing is expected of us. We didn't have a meeting that day, and so we want to visit this church, at least meet the pastor and give him our information packet. And many times those pastors actually give us a love offering.
That's awesome.
I've even had members of the church, they would give us a love offering. Yeah. I guess you probably, the money handshake, they have money in there.
Exactly.
That's awesome feeling,
used to knowing how to
and
take that.
It's always surprising, and it's almost like maybe a little awkward because you don't know what to do or what to say.
Sure.
Except, thank you.
Thank you. That's
we
all.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Coming from a guy that's folded up a bill and stuffed it into someone's hand, that's you're not expecting anything. That's it. They say thank you, and you're happy that they got the money.
I'll tell you another funny story was at that missions conference I told you about, where all the members went around and they gave offerings to the missionaries. There was a missionary that came out of that church. He was there at the missions conference, and he came by us and he gave us some money. And I looked at him, kind of making a joke. I said, "Wait, you're a missionary. You need money." He said, "I know, it's awkward, isn't it?"
Yeah.
But I was just so touched by that. Another missionary giving money to a missionary. So
that's awesome.
It's pretty amazing. And that happened another time too, at a missions conference. There was another missionary there, and he I think he sent me a $20 bill. He said, "I want to give this to you. I want to support your ministry." And I just thought, wow, for another missionary to give another missionary money, that is truly a sacrifice.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I kind of took that as an example, and I did that once before. I gave some money to another missionary at a missions conference.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we are at the end of our hour. Thank you so much for getting together with us. Anyone that wants to find you, I'm thinking the website is fbmi.org. And they'll be able to look you up. And that's the Vincent family to the Philippines, who will hopefully be getting out there in just a couple of months. Yeah, you could probably just type in my name, Ian Vincent, and then FBMI, and then it should come up. You'll see a web page of us. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And we're going to have you preach at our church tomorrow night. And we can't wait to meet the rest of your family. And it's going to be a great time. Sounds great. Hopefully I can be on a podcast again. This is fun. Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we will talk to you next week.